All right, guys, how's it going? Spiritual psychosis is something that is very much in the news right now, especially because of the tragic unaliving of an astrology influencer. She also unalived her 8-month-old baby and her fiance. And the apparent, what's going on, guys? The apparent cause of this was spiritual psychosis. And spiritual psychosis is a totally different animal than a psychotic break or, any other type of really obvious mental illness. It can happen in all sorts of different ways to varying degrees with varying levels of, impact and consequence. By the way, real quick, I want to let the subscribers know, people have been complaining that they're not getting notified even if they have all notifications on. And I got in touch with the YouTube people, and they said that you have to go into the YouTube troubleshooter and click that you're not getting notifications from a specific channel, and if enough people do that, they might actually fix it. So I really appreciate it if you're having that issue, to go ahead and go through that process for me. It'll only take a minute, and it might really help me get traction, so that would be awesome. Okay, so I only have about a half an hour tonight, but this is something that really matters, and it's something that's kind of close to my heart, because as someone that has as a life objective sort of contributing to the evolution of human consciousness in a productive and meaningful way, there's a lot of new age quackery that goes on. Religion is another culprit, another deviant element in this process. And one of the main causes of spiritual psychosis is actually the consumption of pop culture spirituality. There are a lot of ideas out there that are not healthy. They're extremely toxic, extremely dangerous, extremely damaging. And because spirituality has become trendy, there's a sort of virtue signaling element and, herd conformity pressure that comes with any kind of trend. And because spirituality is so fundamental to our psychological, state, our emotional state, our entire being, it's a foundational aspect of ourselves. Whatever we consume that goes into the substratum of our being, defines who and what we are and how our life is led. So when you absorb ideas that have no substance, I often say that any untruth, any falsehood is evil to some degree, right? So, just to give you a couple of examples of really damaging beliefs, any time that you believe something just because the majority does, you're making a mistake, But I'm gonna give a couple of examples of these kind of ideas that can lead to serious problems for people. One of them is parasitical entities and spiritual attachments. Almost definitely not real. And, I guess it depends on how you define real and what you think a spiritual attachment is, or these entities. But I always cite these studies, right? There's tons of them over many decades, and they have all concluded that the only people that are affected by demons are people that live in cultures that believe in demons. So, that, if you can't understand why that speaks tremendous volumes, I don't know what to tell you. It's just so self-explanatory and easy to understand. To take this a little bit further, though, the parasitical entity idea and the idea of attachments, people blame the manifestations of their trauma and their damage, the things that really actually need to be addressed in a way that actually has substance and efficacy and has some kind of impact, that's why these ideas are so popular. When ideas get popular, you should be suspicious. The reason Christianity is so popular is because it lets people believe that they can be whatever kind of douches they want and just put their problems on a zombie, and then they get to go to heaven anyways. So it's like the ultimate spiritual bypassing opportunity, right? So that's why it's so popular. I mean, that's a huge part of why it's so big. So spiritual entities and demons and all this stuff, it's kind of the same thing. It gives people an excuse to lose their minds and, just to be damaged and not do anything about it. And when you have a situation where people have figured out that they can make claims to be able to remove these entities for money, then you have people that have a profit motive to convince people that these things are real and that they have one and that they can remove it. So now you have people in a position where they may have some serious damage, some serious trauma, even some mental illness brewing, spiritual psychosis, on its way. And somebody wiggles their fingers around and, puts a newspaper on their head so they look like they is deep, and say some mumbo jumbo and tell you is going to sleep. And rather than saying to this person, who are you jiving with this cosmic debris? People take it seriously. And so they think they've been healed when in reality, absolutely nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. And so now they think they're all better and they go running around being lunatics and getting worse. And, I've seen this plenty of times. It even, there's a tiered scam that fake psychics do where they'll, first of all, in the Western mystery occult tradition, it's actually considered unethical to tell somebody what their previous reincarnation is. Even if you really know, let's say you really know, it's not your place to put it in their head if you're wrong. If your words have a lot of weight and someone respects you because they see you as a shaman or a magician or an initiate that's on a higher rung than them, right? And then you tell them stuff so they believe you, and you're wrong. You have totally derailed this person's progress and growth. So as soon as somebody is doing a past life regression and they're telling you, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. I went for a hike with an absolutely extraordinary person today, and she actually does past life regressions, but she does not tell the person anything. It's only questions and provocations of feelings and maybe memories, but there's no planting of ideas, right? So there are ways to do these things that are ethical and that don't run any risk of contaminating someone else's spiritual process, right? But as soon as someone tells you, like I had a friend I had a huge falling out with over this, which blew my mind. But he went off the rails on the Wuchu train, and I told him as much. And so what the psychic will do is ask you a few questions so they have an idea of your profile. And then they'll tell you, so let's see, you're into plant medicine, probably want to be a shaman, because that's what happens to almost everyone that drinks ayahuasca twice or whatever. So you're the reincarnation of a great shaman. So now she's told you something you want to believe, right? So whatever comes next, you're invested in believing her because she's given you this one anchor point, right? You don't want to not believe the first thing, so you're going to be more inclined to believe the next thing. So it's almost like a bait and switch kind of trap. And you have a spiritual attachment, and I can get rid of it for $1,500. See what I mean? So now my friend is telling me, yeah, there's this woman that's attached to me, and that's because he would shift in and out of his subconscious when he took higher doses of plant medicine, and the shift was dark and scary. And so rather than, and he actually told me at one point that he had never considered that he had a subconscious. So he had never done any work with this, never looked at it. So now, instead of examining his shadow and his subconscious and trying to work with it so that he's an integrated person, he's got some, woman with a newspaper wrapped around her head so she looks like she is deep, and she's like, I got a crystal ball, but I got a crystal ball, and some foaming goo, the foam of Aphrodite. These are all Frank Zappa lyrics, by the way, if you're not familiar with the references that are, millions of years old at this point. Cosmic Debris is the song. It's hilarious. Definitely go check it out if you've never heard it. It's about this very thing, obviously. So, instead of dealing with the subconscious and going through the process of shadow work and integration and all this stuff, he's just got some psychic wiggling her fingers and saying she's removing this spirit. And so he's going to go, facilitate plant medicine, shifting in and out of this like dark subconscious. He doesn't even remember doing it, believing that he is not doing it anymore because some woman has separated the entity from him. You know what I mean? So I know these ideas are really popular, and there are probably people that are going to click right off as soon as I start telling them it's not real, because they're very attached to all this bullshit that allows them to live in a comic book. But it's getting people killed. It is, Also, the idea of channeling. In a Western mystery tradition setting, or in a lot of different types of shamanism, there's some sort of hierarchy, and it's not the kind of hierarchy where a person is on a pedestal like a priest, but there is a mitigating element, right? So somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about is not going to talk and pollute the air with, falsehoods. You know what I mean? And they're also there to kind of regulate the process so that, you don't take these things lightly, I guess is what I'm saying. If channeling is real, you have to remember that you're assuming that you're actually engaging with ancient consciousness that is hundreds or thousands of times beyond that of a human, and you think you know for sure who it is that you're letting in your head, even if, let's assume it's real. How dumb is that? Even Aleister Crowley, who is alleged to be this terrible black magician, compared people that do this with like people as if their body is a condom that's being passed around. And if you really have training in like a fraternity, a mystery lineage, you will learn. But your average housewife with an IQ of 105 that has not ever, studied Latin or Greek, and, they do not have the mental capacity to navigate this terrain. And so, these things become popular, people start doing it, 99% of them are just hearing voices in their head. And it's like the more the voices are present and the crazier the shit is that they're telling them, and the more committed they are to playing out these delusions, basically, the cooler they are, the bigger they are on TikTok. So, we have fundamentally lost the respect for the office of the shaman and the magician and the seer. Please do hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider joining me on Patreon, joining my Patreon, or supporting through one of the options in the chat, because I am demonetized and deprioritized, and nobody's even getting notifications anymore, apparently. So it's not getting any easier for me. So I really do appreciate your support now more than ever. So where are we at with this? Yeah, we've lost the respect for the office of the magician and the shaman, and it's very easy to perceive popularity as respect. It's not. Just because everyone, is all about plant medicine and shamans and mystics doesn't mean that they have learned what respect is. We come from a culture where respect is often vacant just generally. So, people are way too eager to put these labels on themselves. There's no one without the hierarchy of initiation to give you your diploma and say, yes, you definitely have achieved this level. And in any system where there's hierarchy and initiation, there are tests. It's not the person's opinion. It's objective results. Your success is your proof, right? So the fact that we have all these people now that feel like they can just ordain themselves channelers, starseeds, you're in contact with aliens, and yet you don't know how to build a spaceship or like open a star portal, or like where is the justification for these claims with any of these people? Any of them. So I think it really is an extremely damaging circumstance that we have this sort of pop culture, sort of comic book spirituality that has the potential to really, dissolve people's sense of self, their sanity, and there's a profit motive now, So what does all this lead to, right? So you were rewarded for being delusional. The more delusional you are, the more spiritual you are. The more judgmental you are, the more it's really a crazy thing to watch. But what does it lead to? If you're successful, ego inflation. And then what happens? Your delusions are amplified. They're blown out of proportion. Suddenly, now you believe maybe that you're God, or that you're a prophet, or that the new earth is coming tomorrow, so you might as well kill your 8-month-old and your fiance. This is not really the best situation, especially considering that what we actually need more than anything on this planet is genuine spiritual elevation and consciousness expansion. And that doesn't come from dreadlocking your hair and getting ayahuasca plugs in your ears, or even drinking 1,000 cups of ayahuasca. There's so much more to really truly developing yourself. In my opinion, the mystery traditions have it right. And you are obligated to educate yourself in the sciences, the natural world, philosophy, and all of these mystical practices and plant medicine and stuff, And you are taught how to rigorously analyze and evaluate intuitions and potential transmissions from non-human entities in your mind. This is something that is developed over decades and carefully, and there's a reason why these lineages have maintained protocol for thousands of years and improved that protocol. There is a reason why people sort of venerate shamans and mystics and whatnot. But it should only really no one should be on a pedestal. But you know what I mean? That kind of respect should be earned from results, not because you're on TikTok claiming that you're a starseed. So back to the spiritual psychosis. One of the reasons it's such a difficult and dangerous thing is that it's not necessarily the same as a psychotic break or some other type of, a schizophrenic episode or whatever. It can oftentimes be almost indistinguishable from a genuine spiritual awakening. In fact, in any kind of awakening, there's a sort of breaking down of the mind, because in order for something to reconfigure itself, it has to fragment first. So it's actually normal that there's a dark night of the soul, or that there's a period where you're kind of walking between worlds and maybe not totally grounded, and it's necessary for that to happen. But there is always the possibility of going too far over the line. And in that case, it's actually extremely difficult to help that person, because they are going to be absolutely convinced of their delusions. So this is one area where it's very difficult for me to offer any advice, because I know from experience that once a person crosses that line, you can't just say to them, hey, you're, coming unraveled. The intervention is probably going to have to be pretty dramatic and intense. And I think really the only advice I can give is that I think people hesitate to interfere and to create that level of dissonance. Really, when you really have to confront someone with that kind of intensity where, it's like a drug intervention or something, I think that's very difficult for people. So the one thing I can say about that is don't hesitate. If you see somebody slipping like that and they're close to you and you can do something about it, it's going to have to be something along the lines of a forceful intervention. And the reason I hesitate to really encourage that is that I think that ending up in like hospitals and getting drugged and stuff, which is the response that they're generally going to give to this, that's not really great either, you know? So it is a really difficult position to be in when you have someone that you know is going over the edge, and you just don't really have a lot of good options because they're just not going to listen to you. And, you know, the hospital route is not great either. But my prediction, unfortunately, is that incidences of the spiritual psychosis, and I don't think it's just my prediction, I'm pretty sure that social media is presenting this as a definite reality. This kind of stuff is spiking dramatically, you know, and with varying degrees of consequence. And it's only going to get worse. So, you know, I mean, as an individual person that is embarking on a spiritual journey, you have to really be prepared and understand that you're getting into something that is full of pitfalls, traps, dangers, snares. If you really actually do it for real, you know, if you catch that solar ray of initiation right in the fucking dead center of your pineal gland and that motherfucker just pops open, you know, it's quite a shock to the system. And it's actually quite routine for men in particular to go through this experience of believing that they are the Most High God. You know, I went through it to an extent. Luckily, I had enough common sense to realize, like, wait a minute, pretty sure that this is not right, you know? I never really fully bought into it, but I know, you know, entire families of men that when they went through their spiritual awakening, they had this period like that. You know, it's also almost a waste of breath because even if you're forewarned, usually people still end up having to learn by experience. But I think it's definitely possible to decrease the likelihood that you're going to have any serious problems going through this process with preparedness. You know, you have to be aware of what the process looks like. You know, there are stages. It's like gradient or gradiated. What the fuck is the word I'm looking for? You know, there are stages to it, and if you know what those are and you have some idea of what they entail, you'll know where you're at when you arrive there. You know, that really, really helped me to get through the nastier parts of the process, the more confusing parts of the process, by having a map. And I kind of recognized, like, oh, wait, I know what this is. I've heard of this, you know? So there's another old saying that he who sticks to meditation is perfectly safe. You know, to remember to always bring yourself to a place of clarity and tranquility and stillness on a daily basis or twice a day. Lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is the best tool in your work bag for managing these energies and getting yourself through these processes. You know, that's really, in terms of recognizing the warning signs of like going off the deep end, you just have to train your mind before you get there to be critical and to always remember that there's multiple interpretations of anything that you experience. You know, that's really what got me through it, is just reminding myself that, you know, if I perceived something to be a certain way and it was like too far out of sync with normal reality, I could check myself and say, you know, you just remember that this could be just a subjective experience that has no, you know, objective reality to it. And you just have to really get in the habit of thinking critically and not investing in any of your perceptions or ideas or being absolutely convinced that a voice in your head is anything but your own voice. You know, I think belief really, at the end of the day, is the most dangerous element in this, because people that are predisposed to believe totally in channeling, you know, maybe you have a psychotic break and you are predisposed to believe in channeling, and you also come from a culture that believes in hierarchical religion, right? So if you believe it's a higher being, you believe that you're compelled to do exactly what it says, you know? So this is why I just so adamantly promote not fully investing in any of these ideas. You know, you can be open, you can believe there are possibilities, but doubt can be your savior. Doubt all, doubt even doubt. Doubt is a nagging wife, but an excellent mistress. If you drink and dance all night with faith, you will find a corpse in your arms upon awakening. Drink and dance all night with doubt, and you will find her a virgin in the morning. Old Aleister Crowley yarn, right? So that's really fundamentally the thing. To, you know, always have skepticism as a totally integrated part of your protocol for experiencing anything and everything. And I think most people don't really want to hear that. People want stuff to believe in. People want an escape. Spirituality becomes an escape. It becomes an opportunity for spiritual bypassing. It becomes an opportunity to, escape from reality and enter into a fantasy world. But that's not what spirituality is. Spirituality is self-realization, self-knowledge, self-mastery, and then relating all that to the external universe, you know. Be open-minded, but not so open-minded that wind whistles through your ears. You know, it's so fundamentally important to remember to doubt. If you think about it, all these people that go off the rails and do this crazy shit, it's because they believed absolutely in these things. And that's the killer. That's the real killer. So that's going to be all for tonight. I just felt like, this is such a messed up situation with this woman. And obviously it's not the first time something like this has happened. And I think also the conversation I had with my friend today really sort of highlighted the necessity to address this stuff. I had a sort of colleague, I guess, that I really respected at first, and I still do because I know this person means well. But then there was some mention of someone who was depressed already, for sure, and went to an ayahuasca retreat and then committed suicide. And the explanation that this person gave was that there was a demon that was obviously acquired at this retreat, and that's why the person committed suicide. And, it's this kind of thinking and all of the problems that arise from it that are, creating this spiritual hazard. That's not what happened. It's definitely not what happened. This person was severely depressed, So I would just really encourage any of you out there that might be buying into popular ideas a little bit too easily to just really reassess and reappraise your protocol for evaluating beliefs. You have to view your psychological, spiritual, and emotional. Let me look at the chat just in case there's anything that I really need to address. No, okay. You need to treat your spiritual, psychological, emotional, life with the same kind of care and protocol that you use to navigate the 3D world. It's that important, So in the same way that you wouldn't just let some random ass person into your house, you have to really, 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 really be critical and evaluate the ideas that you let into your mind. Because all it takes is for the wrong one to get in there, and you have let a vampire enter with your permission. So, discernment, 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 discernment. And another actually decent bit of advice I can give before I pop off is that this anti-science attitude that people have developed, and the idea that in order to be spiritual, you should shut down the thinking mind and all of this stuff, I think that's the worst goddamn advice in the history of the universe. You want to balance the thinking mind with the heart and intuition. You don't want to abandon one for the other. You don't want to do that. And so when I'm considering possibilities in this world on any level, you use the same protocol to evaluate things that you would in science, really. There have to be, for example, there has to be a mechanism of action for things to play out. Telepathy is real, but there's brainwaves involved, or entanglement, or there's some kind of physical mechanism that facilitates it. Magic is real, but you're not going to just make money appear on your table or in your bank account or something. You still have to set up conduits for all of the, constituent elements to be put in place, not to wait for them to fall into place, to put them in place. And I do believe that your will can really catalyze, processes and encourage success, in ways that the purely materialist thinker might not accept, But I think it's just really important to ground yourself in this knowledge that we are in the 3D world, and it is constrained to certain laws that are born of necessity, and none of those laws are ever violated. So, having a good knowledge of that and how the universe actually works, and then kind of predicating all knowledge that you actually believe, if you can't find a way for it to fit into the universe as it is designed, then it's in the maybe pile. This is a very simple way of organizing ideas, even spiritual ideas. I think the idea that the spiritual or the energetic and the physical are reflections of each other, and really the only way you can learn about the energetic level is through observation, looking at the reflection in matter and the manifestations of natural law and whatnot. There are all sorts of ways to test spiritual ideas, and that's really the thing, it's people, I think, are kind of lazy about this sort of stuff. Intellectual work is tiring for a lot of people, but I think realistically, spirituality, metaphysics, whatever, it's like any other discipline. If you're going to get to like physicist level, you're going to have to put in a tremendous amount of tedious work, and the people that do not do that, but then claim attainment, represent a serious, serious threat to an entire movement, to themselves, and to other people. So, yeah, magic is just science we have yet to fully understand, or you could say that science is always discovering old scraps of magical wisdom and making a great fuss about its cleverness. Like, quantum loop theory is basically just the old idea of the alpha and the omega, the universe expanding and then contracting back into a point, and this process repeating infinitely. There's a lot of that. Someone also said that magic is the most dangerous and difficult branch of physics. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, Your spiritual reality and your spiritual beliefs should be no less rational than your experience of day-to-day life, And so we'll get deeper into all this at some point, but I have to pop off and go and take care of some stuff. So Please, you guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider joining Patreon. And also, I want to mention one more time that people are telling me they're not getting notifications even if their bell is on. And YouTube told me to ask my subscribers to go into notification troubleshooting and then click not getting notifications for a specific channel, and it'll ask for my link. And then if you give it that, if they get a bunch of those, they'll actually fix it. So until then, my traction is probably going to be not very good. And that's sad for me. So, and also you guys will miss a lot. So, yeah, the Ouroboros consuming itself forever, the dragon of light that Hermes saw, I think it is pretty much symbolic of that process of systole and diastole, the universe expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting. So, all right, guys, I'm going to pop off. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe. Join my Patreon, secret streams, years worth of them. Cheers, guys.